Another day, another Brothers Mahoney. I am Michael.
And I am James.
And today we are discussing the first two-parter with the Revival series being Aliens of London and World War III.
As of course the rest of Christopher Eccleston's season did, this aired in 2005. This two-parter, which was the first two-parter of the Revival era in totality, aired in April. Written by Russell T Davies, who by this point has written 4 of the 5 stories we've talked about in the Revival series. So, I guess it's the showrunner, I guess he has that right. The plot is as follows, although you should watch it instead, but to suffice in 2 sentences, the Doctor returns Rose to her own time, sort of, but her family reunion is ruined when a spaceship crashes in the middle of London. Where's the origin of the spaceship? And where's the Prime Minister going to in this time of crisis?
Yeah, so it starts us off with the Doctor and Rose returning to London. The Doctor says that it's been about 12 hours since the events of Rose. So 12 hours
after the Outons visited.
Indeed. Yeah, so it's been about 12 hours or so, the Doctor says, but as we know, the TARDIS is not always quite reliable, is it?
Neither is the Doctor. I don't know how the Doctor messed this up, but he messed this one up hard. It's not been 12 hours since the Doctor has been away. What was Rose's excuse that she was just at somebody's house overnight?
Yeah, she just stayed at someone's house.
Yeah, it's actually been 12 months, which is a bit longer than 12 hours. So, the episode starts off brilliantly, where, Rose is walking up, to her mother's apartment while, the Doctor's, just, loitering about. The Doctor notices something on a lamppost or whatnot, a missing poster sign, and we see there's a picture of Rose right as Rose walks into the apartment and sees, and Jackie sees her, and, she drops her, cup of tea because, and then Rose sees, all the missing posters, papers on the table. Because for Jackie, it's been a year. She hasn't seen Rose in, an entire 12 months. And Rose just walks in as though it's another day. And then the Doctor, runs up to the apartment and, informs Rose how long it's been. And yeah, it's, the Doctor must have howled her.
Yeah, it's one of the, I don't want to say forced, but it's a pretty good usage showing how traveling with the Doctor can sort of screw someone's personal life up. We didn't really see that much companion focus in the classic Who series. So showing this here really shows, hey, traveling the Doctor, who knows, you might miss a year or two.
Yeah, I think the most we saw, I say always was with Ace, in Survivor, because Ace goes back to Peril. And, I think her friends, we've only seen Survivor once, but I think her friends say something like, you're not around anymore. Which is funny because the Doctor really could just hypothetically get them back to where she, just, a minute after she left. So,
yeah, and I treated pretty casually there too.
Yeah, well, there was a very casual, it's hard to describe, very blue-collar feeling about her friends in that one. I guess we never see them walk, but they're all just, living their lives. None of them are, rich. None of them, have, amazing means. They're just, blue-collar people living their lives. Ace, is one of them. Then she just disappeared, and then she's back for a bit. That just had a very interesting feel of it. But alas, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about this one.
Yeah, and this one's naturally a lot more dramatic, especially since Jackie and everyone seems to be of the belief that Rose just went missing. Well, she did just go missing in their perspective. So she's missing, and then she just walks back home all casual like.
Yeah, and of course, she was traveling with the Doctor. She can't say, what she was doing. So the next scene we see, we're not going scene by scene, but it's just a very striking beginning. The next scene we see Jackie and a police officer, talking to Rose, and Rose, she can't say anything. She's just laying back on the couch. The Doctor's standing there awkwardly.
And Rose's excuse is that she was traveling, she just forgot to call home.
Yes, she forgot for 12 months to call home. So the Doctor tries to take some responsibility, and he has the great line, well, it's kind of my fault. Well, you see, I kind of implored her as my companion. And then the police officer looks at him. So is this a relationship of a sexual nature? And the doctor and Rose are like, no, nothing like that. And some other words are sad. And then Jackie just slaps the doctor right in the face, which is hilarious.
And naturally, that leads to it's a small line, but a more maybe infamous line early on, at least, where the doctor's sort of saying, well, all my times traveling have never been slapped in the face by someone's mother, which Rose says, classic line, you're so gay.
Which a lot of people have criticized, certainly through modern eras. But I think it works for two reasons. One, it's 2005. Well, technically, I guess at this point it's 2006, which depends on the writer if they remember that anything with Rose from this point on modern day Earth, quote unquote, takes place now a year in the future, which is something that is not easy to keep track of, especially if you throw in, newer references. Like there's a whole, I was just reading through it 30 minutes ago, there's a whole timeline controversy created by this. TARDIS Wiki has a page about the aliens of London timeline controversy. Because this now moves every modern day London story a year in the future up to a certain point. Again, it depends if the writer wants to take that into account or not, but technically speaking, in the narrative that they are telling, that is the case. But yeah, so I think it works one because, Rose is a young, like late teens, early 20s person from 2005. I hate to break it to some people, that is how a lot of people talked back then.
I have to say, personal experience, I heard that all the time back in middle school or high school. That type of thing, it's a language that a lot of people use back then, and some people still use it today. So it
does not play very well today. But this story wasn't made today. And also, I mean, I think this is what mostly gives it a free pass. Russell T Davies, the writer of this story, is gay. So who am I to argue with somebody? I'm not gay. So who am I to argue with a writer who is gay thrown into the script?
Yeah, but it's just a sort of a modern day perspective. It just seems sort of different.
Yeah, it certainly is jarring to hear. It's just basically friendly banter. I mean, it's a really good conversation. It's just on the roof of Rose's flat. The Rose is saying, "I can never tolerate him," and the doctor's, there's not much he can say either. Because at this point, it's obvious not that they have a say, but they can't go back in time now to make this not happen because at this point it's already happened. So, although to be fair, I did just read a very interesting thing. I've been looking through some of the Doctor Who books we have, just browsing and see what's coming up. And there's a very interesting conversation that the sixth Doctor has with Mal in the book Millennial Rights, where Mal actually questions the Doctor on something like this. Very short story because Michael actually hasn't read this yet.
And to be fair, James hasn't read the book either.
No, I've not finished the book. This is just near the beginning of the book. And it's not spoiling anything plot related. Well, I guess one small plot related thing. Mal goes to a 10-year anniversary. A 10th anniversary. So she goes there, but she didn't get there naturally. She just asked the Doctor to time travel her to that 10th anniversary. And so, for her, it's only been 2 years, but the rest of the people have lived their lives for 10 years now from, college. It might have been high school, but it really did feel more like college. But anyway, so, Mal questions the Doctor, well, why don't you take me back to my normal life, and I lived through it, and I want to go to the 10th anniversary myself. And the Doctor says the rules of time allow this sort of thing to happen, and that maybe her car would break down, or maybe she would forget, or maybe she would just decide not to go, that she wouldn't meet herself at the 10th anniversary. The rules of time would allow for that. They fix small paradoxes like that from even happening in the first place, at least according to the sixth Doctor. So I thought that was interesting. So I suppose if, Rose and the Doctor went back to 2005 when she was supposed to go back, maybe some invasion would happen that would stop Rose from getting back to see her mother, and she'll just never get to it. So hypothetically, that's a nice little fun explanation, but I suppose that works.
Yeah, but like James said, that's not a conversation that Rose and the Doctor even have here. It's just an interesting sort of, I guess, background conversation that maybe they should have had. Maybe they had off screen. But
I suppose it's to do the philosophy of time travel, which is complicated because time travel is complicated, and they probably did it what we planned.
yeah, and more to the point, Rose probably would have asked that many questions about the philosophy of time travel.
Okay, she wouldn't ask it in terms of about the philosophy, but she would ask questions about it, non-philosophical vernacular. But I suppose that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, but the conversation they do have is Ross pretty much saying, as James said, I've been through all these adventures, and I'm the only one who knows aliens exist, and I can't talk to anyone. And just as she's saying that, a alien ship, crash lands inland and destroying Big Ben, landing in the River Thames. Rose just finished talking about how she's the only one who knows, and then this ship crashes, and she's like, "Oh, it's not fair."
It was hilarious, Billie Piper's acting.
And this leads to a great sequence where the Doctor is sort of like an outsider watching with the rest of the world as they try to deal with the idea of, hey, there is alien life out there now. Hey, it's not out there now, it's right here.
Yeah, of course, the Doctor at this point has certainly not been keeping up with his unit credentials, so he has no way to actually get to the heart of, the ship crash. He's just, standing at a place that's been, barricaded, like miles away from the actual crash. He and Rose are just standing there. They can't see a single thing because, again, it's miles away. So, the Doctor's just, excited about it, and Rose is like, well, wait, so alien life, it's just landing. We're just going to stand here. And he's like, yep, as the excited Christopher Eccleston does. And then she suggests that they figure out, what's going on the way normal people do by watching the tally. And then we see the Doctor in Rose's apartment with some hilarious background conversation by Jackie watching the TV, trying to see what's happening, the news reports and the like.
Yeah, and that's another sort of funny thing. Like, Rose has been missing for a year. And the day that she comes back, I mean, naturally, Jackie is happy to see her, but and other people are probably happy too. But they're probably more interested in this whole alien invasion. Well, not invasion, but this whole alien thing going on. So I guess in a way, it's a good thing she came back when she did.
Yeah, it'd be questioned a lot less right now than it would have been on any normal week.
And then Mickey also pops up at the apartment, which leads to another sort of interesting element. I guess Jackie thought Mickey was at fault for Rose going missing, even accusing Mickey of killing Rose. So Mickey's life hasn't exactly been out down the lines in recent days.
Well, recent months.
But throughout the story, we get to see the two of them come together and actually learn to, at least maybe not necessarily like each other, but actually work together, get over that misunderstanding. And there's really a lot of quality drama like that in this two-parter.
Yeah, of course, Mickey's played by Noel Clarke, who we should probably just not talk about that actor. And, of course, Jackie by the great Camila Kodari. And they just are very strong in this episode. They have a lot of good moments. Jackie was always a really good character. Maybe one of the, at least in my opinion, one of the strongest family figures we see in modern day Who. The one you can really most connect to as real person.
No, Roy's father. I mean, that was a good character right there.
Whose father?
Roy's father. Yeah.
I mean, I like the actor. He's a great actor, but yeah, I guess he was
maybe Yaz's mom.
No one in Yaz's family. The sister, you could almost see as being a real person, but the father was just right out. I guess Yaz's mom was fine, but we never really saw much from her.
Yeah, but naturally, Jackie's a fantastic character. And Mickey was pretty useless in Rose, but in this toy, he really does quite a bit.
Yeah, it's been a year for Mickey. He saw Rose. I mean, the thing is, he knew where Rose went. But of course, nobody believed him when he said that, he I don't know if he ever got to the point because I don't know if he ever told anybody because he knew they wouldn't believe him anyway. But she just disappears, with the Doctor in front of him. So he starts looking up history. He figures out, he starts looking. I wonder if he ever talked. No, Clive would have been dead at this point. That would have been unfortunate for him. But yeah, he starts, looking into the history of who this Doctor guy is. He actually finds a lot of it.
Yeah, much like Clive said in Raws, the deeper you look, the more that you find them. And you have to imagine once Mickey's sort of accused of murder. I'm not sure if there was Avo. I mean, it does say he was brought in 3 times, 4
I think
times by the
it was
police.
5 times. I think it was five
Yeah, so
times.
you can imagine being blamed for that. He's trying to actually figure more things out. So he did some good research, and naturally, since he has a computer, unlike Jackie apparently, he can actually do this research, and he just does a lot of things in this story that really strengthen his character.
Yeah, he's a very strong character throughout, and I think it was completely fine for him to be useless in the first story, just because most normal people would be useless in this situation. I'm not dealing with no nasty consciousness. Yeah, he's a very strong presence in this story, and really does, in many ways, help save the day in the end.
We are also introduced to another well-known character in the Revival series, being Harriet Jones, who right now is just an MP for Flydale North, which is a member of Parliament.
Yeah, and of course, we don't live in the UK, so we have the glory of the House of Representatives, not really the Member of Parliament system. But I mean, they're basically equivalent.
But yeah, that's a fun thing about watching some of these Doctor Who things that bring up modern politics, because she is a quote-unquote lifelong backbencher. She's never one of the quote-unquote babes.
Yeah, and Blair's Babes, which is such a sexist term, I don't even like saying it, is it's nothing I certainly knew about. It's apparently a reference to a lot of new female members of Parliament elected from the Labour Party in 1997 in the general election. A lot of women were elected, and apparently a lot of them had pictures taken with Tony Blair, who was the new prime minister. So some newspaper attributed them as Blair's Babes, which again is horribly sexist. It's very maybe not derogatory, but it's not respectful to the people who got elected.
Yeah, it also seems somewhat dismissive.
Yeah, dismissive is very also fair. But yeah, so I guess that means that she's a member of the Labour Party.
But I do find it fascinating though, because that's one of the things that I'm not sure if I necessarily caught with previous rewatches. I mean, obviously, James and I first saw this when we were 11, 12,
around there.
Yeah. So we saw this when it first aired in the US, probably around 2006 or so. And that's just one of those comments that we're not going to understand back then, and unless you knew about the state of British politics in the late 90s, early 2000s, it probably would have gone over your head. Because Harriet Jones says, "Oh, I wasn't one of the babes, just a backbencher," and it's just a small thing. But again, I think it brings life to the show.
Yeah, but we're not experts in British politics. We just find it interesting from just a normal political perspective.
And Harriet Jones is, of course, played by Penelope Wilton, and she was a really fun character in this two-parter, and really stands out quite a bit too. She's some good stuff.
Yeah, and then we get the only other MP we meet in this story. We get David Very playing Joseph Green, who is the MP for Hartley-Dale. I believe both of these districts, alas, were fake districts, which is as fun, but nonetheless it works. Hartley-Dale, Flydale North, it comes to the same. Yeah, so he, I don't know David Very. I don't think I know him from anything else, but he had a very strong presence in this episode. I loved his acting. Some would say it was really campy, and it was, to be fair, quite campy, but I loved every second of it. He really just stole the scenes for me when he was on the screen.
And you might be wondering why this guy would be important. If it's been a while since you've seen this toy, he's the individual who is the acting prime minister.
Yeah, supposedly, I guess this is before Zoom meetings. Of course, London was in a state of gridlock after these attacks. I think they closed everything, which was very reasonable due to the events. Apparently, all the members of the cabinet were out of the city, which is already pretty amazing, considering, as I'm sure the cabinet is pretty loud. As for the current prime minister, do you happen to remember what his name was? Off the top of the head?
I'm not sure if they actually saw his name, to be honest.
They might have named him, but the current prime minister, who maybe they're the ones who beat the Britannia party from the fearmonger. Either way, the current prime minister is just gone missing, so that's very bad timing. So this guy, I don't think it's politically feasible in the slightest. but that's fine. I'm not, again, I don't follow British politics. I don't know what their line of succession is. But apparently he's just acting prime minister now. So he does what he can with that role.
And another performance we have to bring up, and this is a much smaller one, but Neko Mori shows up, and if you feel like you recognize that name, she was also in Torchwood.
Yes, she played Toshiko from Torchwood. Now, it's a completely retroactive thing, which isn't, explained in Torchwood until even an episode Michael hasn't seen.
Yeah, so I've mentioned previously that I have seen some Torchwood. I've seen the first season of Torchwood and the first, couple of episodes of season 2?
I think the first 3.
Yeah, so I have seen some Torchwood, but certainly not all of it, and certainly not whatever James happens to know.
Yeah, and I don't believe you know much of anything that you haven't seen.
Yeah, when I'm reading things online, I don't usually troll through Torchwood theories. It's not my go-to stuff.
But yeah, no, so they don't talk about this on Torchwood until, the end of season 2, I believe. Yeah, this was actually Toshiko. Keep in mind, in Torchwood, she's not a doctor. In this episode, she looks like she's doing an autopsy. And she might have the know-how to do it, but she's not actually a medical doctor. Toshiko's more of the computer expert. But it turns out that she was filling in for Owen, because Owen had a hangover, which is completely in character with Owen, by the way. So I think that's just a nice bit of funny world building.
Yeah, and it's another one of those cases, much like in The Unquiet Dad, where they, of course, brought back one of those actresses to play Gwan, and here they're bringing back another actress to play another main character in Torchwood, and it's just nice to see that type of thing.
And now they mention it, technically speaking, they bring back Captain Jack to play somebody else in Torchwood. So really, only Owen and Ianto were left out of this fun little happenstance.
Yeah, this story also brings back UNIT, being the United Nations Intelligence Task Force. They don't really do a lot. There's not a lot of personal connection with the Doctor. Mickey does say that the Doctor used to work for them, and the Doctor does use a specific code word or two, but UNIT here just doesn't really feel much different than any other generic military organization. There just doesn't feel like a personal connection between the Doctor and UNIT in this story.
Yeah, certainly not anymore at this point. I mean, considering the Time War, I wonder if any stories exist where the 8th Doctor had to deal with them. And honestly, I doubt the War Doctor ever did. So it's not all that surprising to me that they lost their connection.
Yeah, that's another thing. They easily could have mentioned somewhere the Doctor, referencing the Brigadier. They didn't. It was just, it just talked about UNIT. But it's just one of the things where they probably wanted to just drip feed old ideas into the new show. So they bring back UNIT. They might have seen as, hey, that's enough. I've stopped talking about the past. So they probably thought that would work out okay.
And I think it works. I think bringing... I mentioned for the Rose that they sort of shown pictures of previous Doctors, and I still stand by that. But for this, I think it's fine to not mention the Brigadier. I mean, they got a point of... they got across the silent point that, hey, he used to work for UNIT, as we saw during the Third Doctor's era, which is, way back in the early 70s. So that's already good enough for me. They can bring back the Brigadier, and in fact, they do bring back the Brigadier in a Sarah Jane Adventures episode, which Michael, again, hasn't seen that one either.
Yeah, and that's something I'm looking forward to. But yeah, Aliens of London, I think it sets up a pretty good beginning to a 2-part episode.
And a great mystery.
Yeah, a decent mystery too, with an alien crashing in London, but it's possible that was more staged than anything. Then you have an alien species who's sort of taking over, technically species, taking over officials in the British government, really obscure officials too, and maybe not just the government, there's even someone who's in the boarding club.
This is true. That news person had a lot of information.
Yeah, that guy knew what was going on. So we see a species, quite about 8-foot tall species. The CGI doesn't always work, but I think in general the species looks actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the CGI works pretty well, and yeah, the species, and I'm going to pronounce this name only once, just, because I do like the name of the species, but they're the Roxacorphalopatorians, and of course they're the sister planet to Clam, but that's another story. Yeah, this species, who we see later on in other bits of, media, I just really like what they look like, honestly. I think they all look rather intimidating. I do especially like the class they have. And I like the little we learn about the culture as well.
Yeah, they seem to me a pretty interesting antagonistic force. The plan in this toy is, I think, pretty fun. And like James said, the acting, in the window in the like human skins is pretty funny. Especially that one guy. Oh God, I was busy.
Yeah, apparently, so these aliens had come to Earth, I think about 6 months ago, is what they said. And they started impersonating, they killed and replaced different people out throughout the UK government and smaller things, like, for example, leading, like, person who owned the boating club. So this one guy took over the body of someone who had a wife, a mistress, and a farm boy. And he was very busy, as he said. I don't remember who the actor was off the top of my head, but that was hilarious. Just the performance there.
Yeah, so I think the episode really sets up the story well, good mystery. And one thing I also wanted to mention was that the cliffhanger for the first episode was, I think, fantastic. It was sort of a three-pronged finale. The Doctor and a bunch of experts on alien life form are being attacked by one of these aliens. You have Jackie, who's being interviewed by a police constable who's also a member of the same family, being attacked. And then Harriet Jones and Rose, who found each other earlier, are being attacked by another one of the family members. Just like a three-pronged attack, and it's really exciting finale.
It is. And what I really liked about the end of the first episode was, one, the Doctor, he's in this room. He was brought to Downing Street with a bunch of alien experts, because he's just on the list. There's a fun scene with Jackie Coulson, talks about, like how Dowders had an alien encounter. And when the words Doctor and Towders came up, they started a flashing alert, because, that's someone they need in this situation. So he was picked up and taken to Downing Street. He was also quite happy about it. He was cheerful. He was waving to the cameras. Well, in great Christopher Eccleston fashion. But yeah, so now at the end of the episode, all these experts and aliens are in the room, and that, they're all, listening to the report. And then the Doctor, about 10 seconds after the report's handed out, starts pontificating about the actual interesting thing in the report that's hidden behind everything else. He's just solved everything automatically, and he solves it right in front of the two masquerading aliens before they can even, start in on the plan. So it's just fun to see him think through it, and he figures everything out pretty quickly. He just isn't able to act fast enough to save anybody's life in that situation.
Yeah, and you do see the Doctor displaying more of his, I guess, in a way, grief, his sadness at not being able to help people. There's a scene in the second episode where a character was killed previously, and the Doctor asks both Rose and Harriet Jones, like, what was his name? And Harriet's like, oh, I bought him a cup of coffee, but I never actually learned his name. And the Doctor's just so sad about that. He just looks at the corpse and says, I'm sorry. It's, it's a small thing, but this Doctor's obviously been through a lot. And it's more, obviously, a lot of times he has a sort of frantic glee going on, but he can also be quite somber at times, as well, of course, the end of the world sure does.
But yeah, back to the Slitheen. There's not a single actor who portrays a member of the Slitheen family, and that's the fun thing. We're not dealing with a species. I guess technically it's the same species, but it's actually a family business, not even a species-wide invasion. So that makes it, more fun dynamic-wise. Yeah, as already previously mentioned, David Various Joseph Green was just a treat to watch. We have the great Rupert Van Sithout, who you might recognize. I didn't recognize him from anything else, except he plays Bran Jan Royce in Game of Thrones, who is one of the Vale Lords. I'm a big Song of Ice and Fire fan. I love the books, tolerated the show, past a certain season. But yeah, I love the series. It's just great stuff. If you haven't read it, you should read it. I'm even a fantasy guy, and I still like the series. So, but yeah, he plays Bran Jan Royce, who I think in the show is very memorable in his performance, and he was just really great to see here, especially since, of course, I didn't, see him play in Game of Thrones until after this episode, and then I come back to this, and he's one of the actors, so that's just really fun. He plays the Janiel Asquith, who we actually see as a normal human before he's taken over by a Slitheen. In fact, he tries to basically depose Green after he sees that Green's acting basically like a complete idiot, just making mockery of the whole potential invasion. And of course, the general has no idea why he's acting that way, because, to him it's a very serious situation. The Slitheen don't take kindly to that, and they kill him, and then they replace him. So I guess it, hoped that he was a big or bodied person. The thing with the Slitheen is that they can compress themselves. They are, in fact, 8 feet tall, but they can only compress themselves so much. So they need bigger bodies to inhabit. So it works out well. We have, of course, Annette Badland, who plays Margaret Blaine, who is, well, of course, impersonates Margaret Blaine, who was the head of MI5, which is a very important role to get yourself the head of. As this means they sort of started a policy after this of to force the main people in government to start dieting, because this was a very effective invasion simply because of the people they were able to take control of. And lastly, the aforementioned Slitheen, who enjoyed all of the fun he got to have with the person he took over, was played by Eric Patz, and he was playing a character named Oliver Charles, who in fact is the one who killed the Prime Minister, because he was supposed to have driven him somewhere, when sadly just killed him. So they were able to get Jeremy Green in place.
The main problem with the Slitheen, and I think one of the only real problems I have with this two-parter, is that because the Slitheens compress themselves to fit into these bodies, there was a lot of extra gas in the system. So there's a bunch of fluctuant humor here, which seems more childish than I would care for. It's not really my type of humor. That type of thing happens throughout both episodes, and it's not like a big part of the story, but it just comes up every now and then. And since it's not really my type of humor, it's like one of the things I just don't care for. But that's really, as far as this two-parter goes, one of my only issues with it.
Yeah, really, it is. For me, it is just that really takes me out of enjoyment. Like, I don't watch Doctor Who to watch scary movie. I really don't like that. Really, you could call it humor, I guess, but I don't really like the lowbrow stuff. It doesn't feel like the type of humor I enjoy, and it didn't work for me in this episode either. I mean, at the very least, they had an explanation for it. I'll give them that. That wasn't just to have it. I mean, I guess they could have not had it and then not had the explanation. But either way, it's fine. The Slitheen are fun also because, one, they're a very memorable family. We're the Brothers Mahoney, but we're not quite as memorable as this family. Alas, I'm not 8 feet tall and I'm certainly not green. But so they've also shown up in other places as well. Of course, Mike has seen the first couple of episodes of the Sarah Jane Adventures, and we know they show up in that series as well. I happen to know they show up maybe more than once. Spoilers. Sadly, as far as I can recollect, they don't ever show up in Torchwood, though. But they show up in a couple of the BBC new series adventure books, which look like they're great fun. Honestly, a lot of those books look like they're fun to read. And they even show up in the main range of Big Finish Doctor Who. Very late in the main range. It's like story number 265. I think there's only, 275?
I think so, though I'm not quite the audio expert that you might be.
Yeah, I think there's only 275. But so, yeah, they even show up in one of those. In fact, I only learned this today. They show up in a Torchwood, of course. It's Big Finish. Everything has an audio. But yeah, so Torchwood has a monthly audio range, and they show up in one of these, a story entitled Sink, starring Susie from Torchwood, of course, and Margaret Blaine from this story. Sink came out in 2019, and I honestly can't wait to get to these audios, but that's alas going to take a while. But it is always nice to see Doctor Who enemies show up in really random places like this.
Yeah, so the Slitheen were, I think, one of the more popular antagonists that the first season brought us, at least so far, certainly more popular than the Goth became. Much like the Slitheens being sort of a popular antagonist, Terry Jones later becomes a more important character too. And she does a lot of good things in this two-parter. Troy Ann, she's like, oh, I'm the only elected official in this room, with, of course, the other people being the Doctor and Rose. So to her, that gives her the ability to sort of make decisions that the Doctor and Rose otherwise would have to make. And also, when both Rose and Jones are threatened by the Slovene, Harriet Jones sort of says, "Hey, take me first. I'll just to protect for just a little longer Rose's life." So that shows like really strong moral character.
Yeah, Harriet Jones was just really good in this episode. The Doctor later says that she leads Britain's golden age, which sounds really cool, and that she elected 3 successive times as Prime Minister. Which, to be fair, in the UK doesn't seem to mean as much, since they can go through Prime Ministers, like nobody's business. I mean, they went through 3 in 1 month just very recently.
Yeah, which means that when the Doctor sort of divorces her later on, at the end of the Christmas invasion, well, there goes the golden age of the UK.
I guess that wasn't a fixed time.
Yeah, I found that funny. It's not like it's referenced at the end of the Christmas invasion, like, oh, I'm just ruining the golden age, but just the implication that, oh, she brought the golden age and here comes the Doctor just ruining it. It just sort of amuses me.
Well, it also fits in with David Tennant's Doctor.
Another aspect I really enjoyed about this episode is the music. I mean, the music for the first episodes have been just fine, but this episode feels like, to me, one of the first times I've really noticed the music.
Well, I noticed the music during the final sequences, of the end of the world with Rose talking to the Doctor. But yeah, besides then, this has the best music.
Yeah, especially the scene in which the acting Prime Minister is giving an address about the upcoming war that the world's going to have to go to against this alien threat that they are claiming exists. And during that address, there's some really good music in the background, which I think is, for me, one of the first times that Maury Gold, who does the music for the show, really stands out and shines.
Yeah, it's just very emotive. It does very good to set the tone for, basically, the Prime Minister is pleading with the United Nations to give them the codes to atomic weapons, which, of course, they're just going to use, for their own means, the Slovene, but they, of course, have to make it look good. But so they're doing a very helpful plea, and the music really does sell that.
And another thing that really works is that because this is a 2-part story, it gives the story room to breathe. A lot of these actions that go on seem realistic, like once the human race figures out that, hey, this might be the end of the world, like these alien creatures have weapons that they could destroy us, like the streets are empty the next day, the news is out pretty downcast. It seems like a very urgent thing. It feels a lot more real than what you might see in later Moffat or Chibnall's toys.
Of course, at the end of the day, with Mickey's help, the Slovene are defeated. That hasn't gone unnoticed to the Doctor. The Doctor actually invites the Doctor himself. This Doctor actually invites Mickey to travel with Rose and him on the TARDIS, which is just very surprising from the Eccleston's Doctor.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Mickey doesn't believe that he would be able to handle it and refuses, but he wants the Doctor to sort of carve it for him. And the Doctor, because he now has a deeper respect for Mickey, who, if you remember, he keeps calling Mickey Ricky just to annoy him. There's no other reason.
Because he says this because he doesn't care to remember the name, but he knows. I mean, he keeps saying his name is Ricky, so of course he knows it's Mickey. It really is just to annoy the hell out of him, and it works, to be fair.
Rose is like, "Oh, can he come with us, Doctor?" And the Doctor's like, "No, he would be a liability out there."
Actually, it's actually even worse than that, because Rose, I don't know how she thought this would fly. Rose just invites Mickey herself without even asking the Doctor, and then the Doctor says, "No, sorry, he can't come."
It seems like Rose was even all that cut up about it.
No, that's honestly like one of the worst parts has to be from Mickey's point of view, because Rose just says, "Oh, sorry, Mickey," kisses him goodbye, a very light kiss, and then she just runs off again with this other guy. So, yeah, it really was Mickey's night.
And of course, later on, we do see Mickey traveling with the Doctor for a bit in season 2. So, if you want some of that in your life, well, there it will be.
Yeah, I really do hope there was some extended media, maybe some audios, maybe some books. Although I guess who's really going to take the time to write Mickey into a book. But during the time with the 10th Doctor, Rose and Mickey would be a fascinating time to explore in more detail. We only get, one episode with the Doctor, Captain Jack and Rose. And so we only get one episode 1.5 kind of with the Dr. Mickey and Rose. I just think those dynamics would be really interesting. I think both, I hope both will be expanded upon in other media besides, of course, the show. And speaking of other media besides the show, to quickly place this on the Ninth Doctor's timeline, of course, as always, with the help from the TARDIS Wiki, which is an amazing source if you're a fan of Doctor Who. This one's pretty simple. It takes place in between the Unquiet Dad and the next episode, which is the always amazing Dalek. But alas, extended media has a lot more than that, and the Ninth Doctor has more than those under his belt. So there's a Rose story in the 2018 novel, The Days He Saved the Doctor, 4 stories from the TARDIS. And so this takes place before Aliens Have Landed in World War III. Of course, that's a book with 4 stories. The story that Rose appears in is Rose and the Snow Widow, which is a nice fun name. And then right after this will be the very first book, the BBC new series Adventures, which of course was BBC's new book series, starring the new Doctors appearing in the Reviver series. And the first book was The Clockwise Man in 2005. Same year, of course, the show started. And this book apparently takes place in between Aliens Have Landed in World War III and Dalek. So neither Michael nor I have read in either of these new series books. In fact, honestly, we've never read any of the Doctor Who books quite yet. We are reading one right now, but we're not quite done with it. It's, there's a lot, we have other things to do in our lives, but we're working on it. A lot of the new series books especially look interesting to me since I, basically grew up watching these Doctors. I like all the other Doctors as well, but I didn't grow up with them as much as I grew up with these. So I'm looking forward to getting to these.
Yeah, and that should be fun. I look forward to some of them too. Some of the 10th Doctor and Martha's toys look quite fun to me. There's one called Wat World, which takes place in like a swampy planet, which always intrigued me. So yeah, those should be fun to get into. As far as Aliens Have Landed and World War III go, I think it's a pretty fair 2-parter. I think it's generally pretty good. It might not quite be as well, let me rephrase, it's nowhere near as memorable as The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances. But it's still a pretty good 2-parter with a lot of good performances. Again, I think Camille Coduri, who plays Jackie, is really good. Noel Clarke as Mickey shines in this toy. And Harriet Jones, played by Penelope Wilton, is a lot of fun too. And there's a lot of good drama here. You of course, have Jackie worried about the safety of her daughter traveling with the Doctor. Rose's decision to travel with the Doctor against her mother's wishes. I mean, this is just good drama here. And it fits with this toy pretty well, given the whole setup of the story when they arrive a year after they originally left. So, yeah, there's some good drama here. I think it's a pretty good story. CGI can be a little iffy at times. Humor can definitely be a little iffy at times. But in general, I think it's a pretty strong story.
Yeah, and it had a very strong ending. The ending where the Doctor leaves with Rose. The Rose tells her mother that, "Hey, Mom, it's a time machine. We could be back. I could have all these adventures, and I could be back in 10 seconds." And to be fair, like Jackie has never at this point had proof it's a time machine. So Rose leaves, and Jackie and Mickey are just standing there at this part where the TARDIS left. Jackie's looking at her watch. 10 seconds pass, and she just, looks sadly and walks away back to her apartment. While Mickey just jumps out in the trash can and, maybe waits for them maybe to return. So I thought it was a very good ending, very kind of sample. It helps us feel what it would be like to be family and friends with a companion, more so than actually the companion. I think that's an important thing that really the classic series never tried to touch on at all. So I really liked it. Yeah, the humor is not my type of humor, but I didn't mind the CGI at all. I thought it worked in every scene it was in. I especially like the hallway scenes where it was so obviously CGI, but I just liked how they were sad. But, I thought it was a really good 2-parter. Probably not the best 2-parter the series has to offer, certainly, but not at all a bad one. I think I thought it was a great 2 episodes of Doctor Who. And for the record, we are not completely ignorant that we did not discuss the real life political implications of this episode of, people gaining political power using
False flag attacks.
using potentially false flag attacks to get more power. But we're not going to go into any of that rigmarole because, while we are interested in politics, we can't have these episodes be too horribly long, and we can't go on for hours. So
yeah, it's also worth mentioning that we talk politics a bit in the film Mango and the Downators, if you've listened to those two releases. So it's nice to take a break once in a while, and yeah, we don't always need to dissect the politics in every single story.
Although it is fun.
Yeah, it certainly can be. But speaking of fun, what do you have coming up next, James?
Next, we will be discussing, I presume we pronounce it, the Marian Conspiracy, which is the 6th Doctor Who main range audio drama, which stars the 6th Doctor and a new companion Michael and I have never had the pleasure of listening to. I believe it's Aveline Smythe.
Yeah, I would assume Smythe, but I guess until I hear the name, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Especially if you see the 6th Doctor interact with somebody who he does strangle. But no, I do like the 6th Doctor with Perry, but it would be nice to see him with somebody else as well.
Yeah, so that should be fun. Yeah, so let us know what you thought about Aliens of London World War III, how much you enjoyed it, if you didn't enjoy it. I was curious about that sort of thing. And as always, you could follow us on Twitter at Brothers Mahoney. This has been Michael.
And I'm James.
And we hope that you have a pleasant day.